Doctor had seen many things die in his 40 years as a trauma physician. He had watched soldiers from 100 worlds take their last breath on his operating tables. He had closed the eyes of warriors, diplomats, and civilians alike. Death was a constant companion in his work, and he had learned to recognize its approach. That was why the human on the stretcher before him made no sense. The emergency bay doors of Harmony's Edge Medical Station hissed open, and the transport team rushed in with their cargo. S's eyes widened as he took in the condition of the patient. The human, according to the data pad thrust into his hands, was named Corporal Danny Blake. What remained of him looked more like burned meat than a living being. "Get him to Trauma Bay 3, ordered, his voice steady despite the shock. His team moved with practiced efficiency, guiding the hover stretcher through the corridors. The human's vital signs displayed on the monitor above the stretcher, and every number screamed impossible. 60% burns covering the body, multiple fractures in the legs, ribs, and left arm, internal bleeding in at least 3 organs, exposure to hard vacuum for 107 seconds. Any one of these injuries would kill most species new. Combined, they should have resulted in death within minutes. Yet the human's heart kept beating, slow, irregular, but beating. "What happened to him?" asked the transport medic, a young who looked ready to collapse from stress. "Transport ship explosion, Doctor. The vessel broke apart during a pirate attack. He was in the cargo bay when it happened. We found him floating in debris, still trying to shield another crew member with his body." Santeni twitched in disbelief. He was conscious in vacuum. "For at least a minute, sir. The other crew member survived because this human covered them during the explosion." They reached Trauma Bay 3, and S team transferred Danny Blake onto the examination table. The smell of burned flesh filled the air. Had to force himself to focus on the work, not the horror of what he was seeing. "Start fluid replacement," he commanded. "Get me a full scan and prep the regeneration chamber, and someone find me the human medical database. Now." His assistant, a efficient named, moved to the computer terminal. "Doctor, his cellular activity is strange. The scanner shows active repair processes already occurring." "That's impossible. No species can self-repair this level of damage without medical intervention." "I'm reading what the scanner tells me, Doctor. His cells are trying to fix themselves." Moved closer to examine the burns. The damage was severe, layers of skin completely destroyed by heat and radiation. But at the edges, he could see something unusual. The tissue was inflamed, swollen, sending resources to the damaged areas. It was crude, inefficient, but it was happening. "Doctor," a weak voice came from the table. Looked down in shock. The human's eyes had opened. They were blue, clouded with pain, but aware. "Don't try to speak," said gently. "You're badly injured. We're going to help you." "My squad," Danny Blake whispered, his voice rough. "Did they make it out?" "Please conserve your strength." "Did they make it?" The human tried to sit up, and 3 nurses had to hold him down. The effort sent his vital signs into chaos, alarms blaring across the monitors. "Yes," said quickly, hopping it was true. "They made it. Now lie still or you'll kill yourself." The human relaxed slightly. "Good, that's good. Sorry for being a bother." A bother? This creature was apologizing while his body fought for every breath. Administered a sedative enough to put down a twice Danny's size. The human's eyes drooped but didn't close completely, added another dose. Finally, Danny slipped into unconsciousness. "Bring up the human medical files," ordered. "I need to understand what I'm working with." The next hour was a revelation and a nightmare combined. Read through human medical data while his team worked to stabilize their patient. What he learned shook his understanding of biology. Humans came from a planet called Earth, classified as a Class 12. Had to read that designation 3 times. Class 12. Only the most dangerous planets in known space earned that rating, worlds where everything evolved to kill everything else. The medical files detailed a species that had developed redundant systems for nearly every vital function. 2 kidneys when one would suffice, a liver that could regenerate from a quarter of its mass, bones that grew back stronger after breaking, a healing process that created scar tissue to reinforce damaged areas. "This can't be accurate," muttered. "No species needs this much durability." "Doctor, you should see this," pulled up an image on the main screen. It showed Earth, a blue and green world that looked deceptively beautiful. then displayed the environmental data. Temperature ranges that swung from killing heat to killing cold. Storms that could level cities. Earthquakes, volcanoes, floods, droughts. Predators with claws and teeth designed for murder. Diseases that killed millions before humans developed medicine. Radiation from their own sun that caused cellular damage. They evolved in this, breathed. Every human did, Doctor. This is their normal. Looked back at Danny Blake on the table. The human had grown up in hell and learned to survive it. No wonder his body fought so hard. It didn't know how to quit. The surgery took 6 hours, and his team repaired what they could, working carefully around the human's unusual biology. Danny's bones were denser than expected, his organs positioned slightly different from the database images. Each human learned had small variations. They weren't manufactured to a standard like some species. They were organic chaos that somehow worked. When they finished, stood back and looked at their work. Danny Blake was wrapped in regeneration bandages, suspended in a medical field that would support his healing. By all rights, he should be dead. But his heart kept beating. Doctor, his cellular repair is accelerating, reported. The burns are already showing signs of new tissue formation. How fast? 3 times what the database lists as normal for humans. Felt a chill run through his body. He's healing faster than his own species' average. Yes, sir. The doors to the trauma bay opened, and Commander entered. The Axion officer was tall, armored in dark blue plating, and carried himself with absolute authority. He had come to observe the human case that everyone on the station was talking about. Doctor said, his voice deep and formal. I've read the initial reports. They seem exaggerated. I wish they were, Commander, but everything in those reports is accurate. Approached the examination table and studied Danny Blake. A human. I've heard stories about their durability. Most of it sounded like propaganda to me. I thought the same until an hour ago. Can he be saved? Looked at the monitors at the stubborn heartbeat that refused to stop. Commander, I've been asking myself the wrong question. The question isn't whether he can be saved. It's whether anything we do will matter. His body is already trying to save itself. That's impossible. I've said that word 6 times in the last hour. It's starting to lose meaning. Approached with a data pad. Doctor, I've compiled the security footage from the transport ship explosion. I thought you should see it. Took the pad and played the video. The footage showed the cargo bay of a transport vessel, peaceful and quiet. Then the explosion hit. The hull ruptured, atmosphere venting into space, debris flying in all directions. In the chaos, saw Danny Blake. The human had been thrown against a wall by the blast, his suit already torn, fires burning on his uniform. But instead of trying to save himself, he moved toward another figure, a crew member who had been knocked unconscious. Danny grabbed and pulled them close, wrapping his body around them as the bay tore itself apart. When the secondary explosion hit, Danny took the full force of it, shielding the smaller alien with his own flesh. The footage showed them floating in the debris field, Danny's arms locked around the even as vacuum froze his exposed skin. 107 seconds until the rescue team arrived. 107 seconds of hell. And Danny Blake had stayed conscious for most of it. Handed the pad back to, unable to speak. Commander watched the video a second time, his expression unreadable. He chose to do this. Yes, sir. Why? I don't know, Commander. Perhaps we should ask him when he wakes up. If he wakes up. When, corrected. I'm starting to believe that humans don't understand the concept of impossible. He looked down at Danny Blake, at this broken creature that refused to die, and asked a question that would haunt him for days to come. Doctor didn't sleep that night. Instead, he sat in his office and read everything the Galactic database had on humans and their home world. The more he learned, the less sense it made. Earth was a nightmare dressed as paradise. The planet looked beautiful in the images. Blue oceans covered most of the surface, green continents spread between them, white clouds drifting in the atmosphere. It could have been any garden world in the coalition, but the data told a different story. Earth's gravity was nearly twice what most civilized species preferred. The atmospheric pressure would crush the oxygen levels were so high that many species would suffer toxic reactions just from breathing, and that was before considering the weather. pulled up climate data and felt his blood run cold. Hurricanes with winds that exceeded 200 kilometers per hour. Tornadoes that could tear buildings from their foundations. Blizzards that buried entire cities in frozen water. Heat waves that killed thousands, and humans just lived through it all. "They call it summer," muttered, reading about temperature swings that would require environmental suits on any sane world. He opened the biological files next. Earth had produced millions of species over billions of years, and almost all of them seemed designed to kill. Predators with claws, teeth, venom, and hunting strategies that would impress a military tactician. Even the plants were dangerous, some producing toxins that could drop a creature in seconds. And humans had learned to eat some of those toxic plants. "They consume poison for enjoyment," read aloud from a file about human cuisine. "Capsaicin causes pain receptors to fire, simulating burning. Humans seek out this sensation and call it flavor." A soft chime announced a visitor. Entered, carrying 2 cups of warm liquid. "You've been here for 8 hours, doctor. I thought you might need this." Accepted the cup gratefully. "Thank you, I'm trying to understand our patient." "Any progress?" "Only in realizing how little I understand," gestured at his screen. "Did you know humans are persistence hunters? They chase prey for hours, sometimes days, until the animal collapses from exhaustion. They simply outlast everything else on their planet." Settled into a chair. "I read about their athletic competitions. They run marathons for fun, 42 kilometers just to prove they can. Some run over 100 kilometers, in mountains, through deserts," shook his head. "They volunteer to suffer." "Perhaps that's why Corporal Blake survived. His whole species trains for endurance." Pulled up Danny's medical file. In the 10 hours since surgery, the human had made progress that should have taken days. The burns were still severe, but the sensors detected new skin cells forming beneath the damaged tissue. Broken bones had begun to knit. Internal bleeding had stopped. "I need to check on him," said Standing. "Come with me." They walked through the quiet corridors of the medical station. Night cycle had begun, and most of the staff had gone to rest. Only emergency personnel remained on duty. Trauma Bay 3 was dimly lit, machines humming softly as they monitored Danny Blake. The human floated in a medical suspension field, regeneration bandages covering most of his body, approached the controls and pulled up the latest readings. "Incredible," he whispered. "His cellular activity has increased another 15%. His body is consuming resources at triple the normal rate." "Is that dangerous?" asked. "For any other species, yes. The strain would cause system failures, but humans apparently have redundant everything." Highlighted a section of the scan. "See this? His liver is processing toxins from the damaged tissue while simultaneously producing proteins for repair, and this is only functioning at 70% capacity." "What happens at full capacity?" "According to the database, a healthy human liver can regenerate from 25% of its original mass. It's essentially a biological factory that rebuilds itself while running." A groan came from the suspension field, and turned to see Danny's eyes flutter open. The human's gaze was unfocused, pain evident in every line of his face. "Easy, Corporal," said softly. "You're safe, you're in medical care." "Hurts," Danny managed, his voice barely audible. "I know your body has been through severe trauma, but you're healing." "How bad?" Hesitated. "How did you tell someone they should be dead?" "You have extensive injuries, Corporal Blake. Burns, fractures, internal damage, but your recovery is progressing well." A weak smile crossed Danny's burned lips. "So I'll live." "Yes, against all probability you'll live." "Good, that's good." Danny's eyes started to close again. "Thank you, doctor." "Rest now, your body needs time to heal." But Danny fought against the sedatives in his system, forcing his eyes open again. The one I was with, are they okay?" "The crew member you protected," checked his data pad. "Yes, they survived, minor injuries only." "Good," this time Danny's smile was genuine. "That's really good. They have kids, you know, 3 little ones back home, showed me pictures." The human finally slipped back into unconsciousness, leaving staring at him in wonder. "He nearly died protecting someone else's parent," said quietly. "Not nearly died, should have died. Did die by any medical standard I know. He just refused to accept it." Over the next 2 days, watched Danny Blake do the impossible. The human's body attacked its injuries with a ferocity that medical science. Burns that should have taken weeks to heal showed significant improvement in 48 hours. Bones began fusing back together. Damaged organs repaired themselves cell by cell. But it wasn't easy. Danny's temperature spiked regularly as his immune system fought infection. His body consumed nutrients faster than the medical systems could provide them. Pain medication that would knock out barely took the edge off his suffering. And through it all, Danny remained conscious more often than he should. Would enter the room to check readings and find the human awake, staring at the ceiling. "You should be resting," said during one such visit. "Can't sleep much," Danny replied. His voice was stronger now, though still rough. "Keeps hurting." "I can increase your medication." "No, makes my head fuzzy. I don't like it." Adjusted the suspension field to make Danny more comfortable. "Your body is working very hard to heal. The pain is a side effect of that process." "Yeah, I figured," Danny managed a weak laugh. "My mom always said I was too stubborn to know when to quit." "Tell me about your mother." It was a calculated question. Had learned that keeping patients talking helped with recovery, gave them something to focus on besides pain. But he was also genuinely curious about the family that produced someone like Danny Blake. "She teaches kids," Danny said, his burned face softening with the memory. "Elementary school back in Minnesota, that's a region on Earth, cold place, snow and ice half the year." "That sounds difficult." "Nah, it's beautiful. You should see the lakes in winter all frozen over. We used to go ice fishing when I was little." Tried to imagine voluntarily going to a place cold enough to freeze water and sitting on it. "That sounds dangerous." "It was fun. Mom would pack hot chocolate and sandwiches. Dad would cut a hole in the ice and we'd drop lines down. Sometimes we'd catch fish, sometimes we wouldn't. Didn't matter much." Why do it if success wasn't guaranteed? Danny thought about that for a moment. Because it was time together, I guess. Because it was tradition. Because sitting in the cold builds character. "Builds character," repeated. "You humans have many sayings like that. What doesn't kill you makes you stronger. No pain, no gain. Suffering builds character." "Well, yeah, don't you guys think that way?" "No, Corporal, most species avoid suffering. We see it as something to prevent, not endure for growth." Danny considered this. "I guess that makes sense, but on Earth you don't get the choice most times. The world's gonna throw stuff at you whether you like it or not. Might as well learn something from it." Before could respond, alarms shrieked through the medical bay. Danny's temperature was spiking, his heart rate accelerating beyond safe limits. "Get me a cooling unit," shouted, rushing to the controls. "His body is overheating." Ran to comply while tried to stabilize Danny's vitals. The human's temperature had climbed to 41 degrees Celsius and was still rising. At 42, brain damage became likely. At 43, death was almost certain. "Danny, can you hear me?" asked, fighting to keep his voice calm. "Hot," Danny gasped. "Really hot." "I know, we're working on it. Stay with me." The cooling unit arrived and they activated it around Danny's suspension field. But the temperature kept climbing. 41.5, 41.8, 42. "Doctor, at this temperature," began. "I know what happens at this temperature," snapped. He pulled up the human medical database, searching frantically for information on fever management. What he found made him freeze. "Look at this. Human fever response. Their bodies can tolerate up to 41 degrees regularly. Some have survived 42 or higher." "But why would a body do that?" Read faster, understanding dawning. "It's a weapon. Heat kills pathogens and viruses. Humans raise their core temperature to fight infection. It's dangerous but effective. So we should let it continue. Monitor him closely. If it exceeds 42.5, we intervene. But I think his body knows what it's doing." They watched Danny Blake's temperature climb to 42.3 and hold there. The human's face was flushed, sweat beading on his healing skin. His breathing came in short gasps, but his vital signs, while stressed, remained within survivable limits. "This is insane," whispered. "This is human," corrected. For 3 hours, Danny's body maintained the fever, stayed the entire time, ready to intervene if necessary. But slowly, gradually, the temperature began to drop. 42. 41.5, 41. By hour 4, Danny was back to 39 degrees, exhausted but alive. What just happened? Asked. Looked at the data, at the readings that should have spelled death, but instead showed recovery. We commander arrived on the morning of the 4th day with a purpose that made nervous. The Axion officer had requested access to Danny Blake's medical files, his service record, and permission to interview the human squad mates. The request was formal and proper, but sensed something beneath the courtesy. Commander greeted him in the medical bay. How can I help you? I want to understand this human resilience everyone keeps talking about, said, his tone neutral. The reports seem exaggerated, impossible even. I felt the same way 5 days ago. And now? Gestured toward Trauma Bay 3, where Danny Blake slept peacefully. The human had made remarkable progress. Most of the burns had developed new skin beneath the damaged tissue. The fractures were healing ahead of schedule. He was breathing on his own without assistance. Now I believe impossible is a word humans don't recognize. Studied Danny through the observation window. He looks fragile, small compared to most military species. Appearances deceive, Commander. That small, fragile human survived injuries that would have killed your people and mine within minutes. So I've read in the reports. I want to see the evidence for myself. Pulled up the medical scans from Danny's arrival and the most recent ones. The difference was staggering. What had been catastrophic damage was now merely serious injury, trending toward moderate. 5 days, said. In 5 days, he's accomplished healing that should take months. Examined the scans carefully. What medical interventions have you performed? Surgery to repair the most critical damage. Regeneration therapy, nutrition support, pain management, everything we would do for any species. Then why is he healing faster? Because he's human, Commander. Their biology is different, aggressive. It doesn't wait for medical science to fix problems, it fixes itself. That's not possible. Smiled without humor. You're the 4th person to say that to me this week. I'm starting to believe possibility is a flexible concept. Requested access to the security footage next. Played it for him again, watching the commander's face as the explosion tore through the transport ship. The moment when Danny wrapped himself around the crew member. The long seconds in vacuum. He made a choice, said softly. He could have tried to save himself. Yes, but he chose to protect the other crew member instead. The has 3 children back home. Danny mentioned that the first time he was conscious. Was quiet for a long moment. I want to speak with his squad. The interviews took place in a private conference room. Sat in the corner observing. Had gathered 4 members of Danny's unit, all human. They entered the room with the relaxed confidence that seemed universal to their species, but noticed the way their eyes hardened when they saw the medical equipment. Is Danny okay? Asked a woman with short, dark hair. Her name was Hayes, according to her uniform tag. He's recovering well, assured her. Better than expected. That's Danny for you, too stubborn to die properly. Began the interview with formal questions about the mission, the explosion, the circumstances. But gradually, he steered the conversation toward human capability. In your experience, asked, is Corporal Blake's resilience common among humans? And the other soldiers exchanged glances. Define common, said a tall man named Carl Murphy. Is he exceptional among your species, or is this level of durability normal? Bit of both, answered. Danny's tougher than average, sure, but we've all seen crazy stuff. Remember Murphy. Murphy nodded. Took shrapnel in both legs during the station raid. Walked 3 kilometers back to base before he'd let anyone look at him. There's also, another soldier added, Lisa got poisoned during a diplomatic mission. Some kind of local food her body couldn't process. Should have died in 20 minutes according to the medics. She lasted 6 hours until they synthesized an antidote. And Henderson broke his ankle during training, continued. Compound fracture, bones sticking out and everything. He still finished the obstacle course before going to medical. His expression remained neutral, but saw the tension in his posture. These are exceptional cases, surely. Commander, with respect, you're not understanding, said, leaning forward. We're not special forces, we're regular infantry. This stuff is just what happens. Humans break, we heal, we keep going, it's what we do. Why? The question seemed to catch off guard. Why what? Why keep going? Why endure such pain and damage? Why not simply avoid the danger? Because people need help, said, as if it were the most obvious thing in the world. Because if we don't stand up, who will? Because giving up isn't an option when lives are on the line. Carl Murphy spoke up. My grandfather fought in Earth's last major war before we joined the coalition. He was in a battle where his position got overrun, took a bullet through the chest, collapsed his lung. He kept fighting for another hour. You know what he said when I asked him why? Wood asked. He said, because my friends needed me and I could still hold a rifle. That's the human way, Commander. If you can still move, you can still help. The interview continued for another hour. The soldiers shared stories that seemed designed to test belief in reality. A medic who treated patients while suffering from a concussion. A pilot who landed a damaged ship with 3 broken fingers. A cook who finished preparing a meal for 100 people before mentioning he'd been stabbed. You said stabbed, interrupted, as in with a knife. Kitchen accident, explained. Blade went into his thigh. He wrapped it in a towel and kept cooking because people were hungry, went to medical after dinner service. This is normal to you. This is Tuesday to us, Commander. When the soldiers left, sat in silence for several minutes. Waited, knowing the commander needed time to process what he'd heard. They're not exaggerating, finally said. No, Commander. If anything, they're understating it. How does the coalition integrate a species like this? How do we give them assignments when they'll simply endure whatever we throw at them? Carefully, suggested, and with great respect for their choices. That evening, Danny Blake woke up fully conscious for the first time since the fever. Was there, checking the regeneration progress on the burns. The new skin was pink and tender but whole, functional. Hey, Doc, Danny said, his voice much stronger. I feel like I got hit by a shuttle. An accurate assessment of your condition, replied. How's the pain? On a scale of 1 to 10, probably a 7, but I've had worse. Went. Broke my leg skiing when I was 16. That was an 8 at least. Helped Danny sit up carefully. The human winced but managed it without assistance. Your squad visited today. They're worried about you. That's nice of them. Tell them I'm fine. You're not fine, Corporal. You're recovering from injuries that should have killed you. Danny shrugged, then immediately regretted it as the movement pulled at healing tissue. But I'm not dead, so I'm fine enough. Your species has a very unusual definition of fine. Yeah, I've heard that before. Danny looked down at his bandaged hands. When can I get back to duty? Absolutely not for several weeks. Your body may be healing quickly, but you need time to regain strength. People are counting on me, Doc. People can wait, your health cannot. Danny started to argue, then stopped. A strange expression crossed his face, something between pain and sadness. You okay? Asked. Just thinking about home. My sister Kate wanted to be a doctor like you. She's studying medicine on Earth right now, pre-med program. You miss her? Yeah, haven't seen her in 2 years. Last message I got, she was complaining about organic chemistry, said it was killing her. Danny smiled at the memory. I wrote back and told her if it was actually killing her, she'd know. Humans are pretty hard to kill. Is that what you believe, that humans are hard to kill? Danny thought about it seriously. I think we're hard to keep down. Killing's probably not that hard if you really try, but getting us to stay down, to give up, that's the hard part. We're kind of stupid that way. I don't think it's stupid. No. I think it's remarkable, terrifying but remarkable. A soft chime interrupted them. Entered, carrying a data pad with an urgent expression. Doctor, we have a situation. A plague ship quarantined and drifting in the outer system. The crew is dying from an unknown pathogen. They're requesting immediate medical assistance. Took the data pad and read quickly. His blood went cold. The pathogen was virulent, aggressive, and had already killed 60% of the crew. Every species that had approached the ship had become infected. They need help, Danny said, reading over shoulder. They do, but approaching that ship is suicide. Then send me. Stared at him. You're barely recovered from injuries that should have killed you. But I'm recovering, and you said it yourself, my immune system is aggressive. If anyone can survive going in there, it's a human. You can't be serious. Danny met his eyes with absolute certainty. People are dying, Doc. If I can help, I have to try. That's not being heroic, that's just being human. Wanted to argue. Wanted to list all the medical reasons why this was a terrible idea. But he looked at Danny Blake, at this human who had survived vacuum and explosion and fire, who had endured a fever that should have cooked his brain, who was sitting up and ready to help despite everything his body had been through. "What alloy was this human forged from?" whispered. Danny smiled, tired but genuine. "Same as all the others, Doc. We're all made from the same stuff. We just don't quit easy." Looked at the data pad, at the desperate plea for help from the plague ship. Then back at Danny, the medical station turned into a research hub overnight. Scientists from 6 different species arrived to study Danny Blake's immune system, hoping to understand what made humans so resistant to death. Found himself in the uncomfortable position of protecting his patient from people who saw Danny as a fascinating specimen rather than a person. "Absolutely not," said firmly to a research director who wanted to take tissue samples. "He's recovering from severe trauma. I won't authorize invasive procedures." "But the data we could gather," the director protested. "Can wait until he's healthy. My patience comes first." The director left dissatisfied, watched the interaction with approval. "You've become protective of him," observed. "He's my patient. I'm supposed to protect him." "It's more than that, doctor. You care about him." Couldn't deny it. Over the past week, he'd watched Danny Blake fight for his life with a determination that logic. The human never complained, never asked why this had happened to him, never expressed bitterness about his suffering. He just endured and healed and prepared to help others. In Trauma Bay 3, Danny was undergoing physical therapy with a specialist known for gentle patience. Observed through the window, marveling at the progress. "Try walking to the chair," encouraged. Danny stood on legs that had been broken in multiple places a week ago. He wavered, caught himself, and took a step. Then another. His face showed concentration, but not pain. "How does that feel?" asked. "Weird, like my legs aren't quite mine yet, but it's working." "You're healing remarkably fast. Most species would still be bedbound." "Yeah, humans are weird that way." Danny made it to the chair and sat carefully. "My dad used to say our bodies are too stupid to know when to give up." Settled into the opposite chair. "Tell me about your father." "He's a construction worker, builds things with his hands. He's got this saying, 'Work hurts, but quitting hurts worse.' Drove my mom crazy, but he lived by it." "It sounds like your culture values endurance." "I guess we do. When you grow up on a planet that's trying to kill you 6 different ways, you either get tough or you die. Humans chose tough." "Earth isn't really trying to kill you, is it?" Danny laughed. "Doc, I'm from Minnesota. We have winters where it's cold enough to kill you in minutes if you go outside wrong. We have summers where the heat can kill you just as fast. Tornadoes, blizzards, floods, nature's trying real hard. Yet you speak of it fondly. Because it's home, because it made us who we are. You don't appreciate the calm without surviving some storms." Entered the room. "How's the session going?" "Your patient is ahead of schedule," reported. "He'll be walking normally within 3 days if this progress continues." "Good, Danny, we need to talk about the plague ship." Danny's expression became serious immediately. "What's the status?" "Bad, they've lost 70 crew members. Only 12 survivors remain, all critical. The pathogen is unlike anything we've encountered. It attacks neural tissue and respiratory systems simultaneously." "Have you identified it?" "No, that's part of the problem. We can't develop a treatment without understanding the disease, and we can't study it without getting close enough to collect samples." "Which means someone has to go aboard." "Yes." Danny stood steadier now. "When do we leave?" "I haven't approved the mission yet. Your immune system is strong, but this is unprecedented risk." "Doc, 12 people are dying. We can't just leave them." Pulled up a holographic display of the plague ship. "I've reviewed the data. The pathogen spreads through contact and possibly through the air. Standard isolation suits may not be sufficient. Anyone who boards that ship has a high probability of infection." "But my immune system beat that other infection, the one that gave me the fever." "That was different. Your body had time to fight it while in a controlled medical environment. On that ship, you'll be exposed to concentrated pathogen levels while performing physically demanding work." Danny met his eyes. Are you saying I can't do it or that it's too dangerous? Both, but I'm the best chance those people have. Couldn't argue with that. They'd run simulations with every species in the coalition. Humans showed the highest survival probability by a significant margin. Danny's already proven immune response made him the ideal candidate. If we do this, said carefully, you'll need extensive preparation. Vaccinations, immune boosters, protective equipment, and I'm going with you. Doc, you don't have to. Yes, I do. You're my patient. I'm not sending you into danger alone. Over the next 2 days, they prepared. Danny received every vaccination and immune booster available. His body processed them with alarming efficiency, developing antibodies faster than the medical team could measure. Arranged for a modified hazard suit that would provide maximum protection while allowing mobility. Commander observed the preparations with grave concern. This is a significant risk, he said during a planning session. All worthwhile actions carry risk, Commander. If you're infected, you could bring the pathogen back to this station. We've designed quarantine protocols. The rescue team will remain isolated until we're certain we're not contaminated. And if the human dies? Look toward the medical bay where Danny was practicing movement in his hazard suit. Commander, I've learned something about humans this week. They don't make decisions based on fear of death. They make decisions based on who needs help. That's irrational. Perhaps, but it's also admirable. The mission briefing took place in the command center, and Danny stood before a display showing the plague ship's layout. The vessel was a civilian transport, not designed for easy quarantine. Infected crew members were scattered throughout, some in medical bays, others wherever they'd collapsed. The priority is getting survivors to the emergency medical pod we're sending ahead, explained. We stabilize them, seal the pod, and launch it back to this station for treatment. What about the pathogen samples? Danny asked. Secondary objective. If we can safely collect tissue and air samples, we do so, but the living take precedence. Always, Danny agreed. They suited up in the docking bay. The hazard suits were bulky, designed for maximum protection. Danny moved in his with practiced ease, testing the joints and seals. You've done this before, observed. Training back on Earth. We practiced for chemical spills, biological contamination, all sorts of fun scenarios. You trained for disasters that hadn't happened yet. That's what training is, Doc. Preparing for the worst so you're ready when it shows up. The transport ship carried them across the dark space to the plague ship. Watched Danny during the journey, looking for signs of fear or hesitation. He found none. The human sat calmly, checking his equipment, reviewing the ship's layout, preparing for the work ahead. Are you scared? Asked. Danny considered the question. A little. Fear's not bad, though. It keeps you sharp, makes you careful. It's panic you've got to watch out for. How do you avoid panic? Focus on the job. One task at a time. Help this person collect that sample, seal this door. You don't think about the big scary picture, you just do the next thing. The plague ship loomed ahead, dark and silent. Warning lights flashed across its hull. No response came from their hails. Life signs? Danny asked. 12 all week. They're running out of time. The docking process was tense. The airlock sealed with a hiss, and they entered the plague ship's dead atmosphere. Emergency lighting cast everything in red shadows. The smell, even through the suit filters, was terrible. Stay close, said. Don't touch anything you don't have to. They found the first survivor in a corridor 20 meters from the airlock. A Axion officer collapsed against a wall, breathing in shallow gasps. Scanned her quickly. Advanced infection. We need to get her to the pod now. Danny lifted the officer carefully, supporting her weight with ease. They moved through the ship, methodical and efficient. Each survivor they found was in critical condition, the pathogen destroying their bodies cell by cell. 4 hours into the mission, they'd recovered 8 of the 12 survivors. Danny showed no signs of fatigue, though the work was physically demanding. His own arms ached from the effort. 4 more, Danny said, checking his scanner. 2 in the engineering section, 2 in crew quarters. They reached engineering and found a scene that made stomach turn. 2 lay on the floor, clearly dead for hours. The pathogen had ravaged their bodies, leaving them barely recognizable. The readings showed life signs here, said confused. Danny moved deeper into the room, scanning carefully. Over here. Behind a bank of equipment, they found two children. Just like the crew member Danny had saved from the explosion, they huddled together, terrified and sick. "It's okay," Danny said softly, removing his helmet despite protest. "We're here to help." "Don't take off your helmet," warned. "The pathogen." "These kids are scared, Doc. They need to see a face, not a mask." Danny knelt in front of the children, making himself small and non-threatening. "My name's Danny. What are your names?" The children stared at him with wide eyes. One of them, a girl, spoke in a whisper. "Lyra." "That's a pretty name. And your friend?" "He's my brother." "Nice to meet you both. We're going to take you somewhere safe, okay? Somewhere with doctors who can make you feel better." "Are you a doctor?" Lyra asked. "No, but my friend here is. He's really good at helping people, and I'm really good at carrying people who need help. Think you can trust us?" The children looked at each other, then back at Danny. Slowly, Lyra nodded. Danny lifted both children, one in each arm, and turned to. "Let's get them out of here." They made it back to the medical pod with all 12 survivors. The launch sequence initiated, sending the pod back to Harmony's edge at maximum speed, and Danny remained on the plague ship to collect pathogen samples. "You shouldn't have removed your helmet," said as they worked. "Those kids needed to see kindness, not a suit. You exposed yourself to maximum infection risk." "Yeah, but they're safe now. That's what matters." They collected samples from the air, from infected tissue, from environmental surfaces. When they finished, they sealed themselves in the ship's secondary airlock and initiated decontamination. "How do you feel?" asked. "Tired, ready to sleep for a week, otherwise fine. No symptoms, no respiratory distress, no neural pain. Doc, if I get infected, we'll deal with it, but right now I feel okay." The journey back to Harmony's edge seemed longer. Monitored Danny's vitals constantly, watching for any sign of infection. The human dozed in his seat, exhausted but peaceful. When they docked at the station, a full quarantine team met them, and Danny were taken to isolation chambers, separated and monitored. The waiting began. In his isolation room, reviewed the mission data. They'd saved 12 lives, collected samples that could lead to a cure, completed the impossible task. And Danny Blake had done it while barely recovered from injuries that should have killed him. "What alloy was this human forged from?" asked the empty room. From the next chamber, Danny's voice came through the intercom. "Steel and stubbornness, Doc. I already told you that." Smiled despite everything. "Rest now, Danny. Let your body fight whatever it needs to fight." "Will do, hey, Doc." "Yes. Thanks for coming with me. It meant a lot." First 24 hours in quarantine were quiet, too quiet. Monitored his own body for symptoms, checking his temperature every hour, scanning his neural responses, watching for the first signs of infection. Nothing appeared. In the next chamber, Danny Blake slept. "His vital signs are stable," reported through the intercom. "Temperature normal, respiration normal, neural activity normal. It's like he was never exposed." "Give it time," said. "The incubation period could be 48 hours or more." But he felt a growing certainty that Danny would be fine. The human's immune system had proven itself time and again. What was one more pathogen to a body that had survived Earth? On the second day, woke to alarms. He jumped from his bed, scanning his own vitals first. Nothing wrong. The alarms were coming from Danny's chamber. "What's happening?" demanded through the intercom. "Temperature spike," answered, her voice tight with concern. "He's going into fever response." Pulled up Danny's readings on his wall display. The human's temperature was climbing rapidly. 38 degrees, 39, 40. "Not again," whispered. But this time was different. The fever didn't spike suddenly like before. It climbed steadily, controlled, as if Danny's body knew exactly what it was doing. 40 degrees, 41. The temperature held there, steady and purposeful. Through the observation window, could see Danny lying in bed, eyes closed, sweating but not thrashing. The human's face was calm, peaceful even. "His immune response is activating," said, understanding. "He was infected after all." "Should we intervene?" asked. "Number watch and monitor. His body knows this dance." They watched Danny Blake's body wage war against the pathogen that had killed 70 crew members. The fever held at 41 degrees for 6 hours. Then, gradually, it began to drop. 40.5, 40, 39. By hour 8, Danny opened his eyes. "Hey, Doc," he said through the intercom, his voice rough. "Got any water?" Laughed with relief. "You just fought off a deadly alien pathogen and you want water. Fever makes you thirsty. You should know that, medical guy. How do you feel?" "Like I went swimming in lava, but alive, definitely alive." The medical team ran every test available. Danny's blood showed antibodies to the pathogen, newly formed and aggressively effective. His immune system had identified the threat, mounted a response, and eliminated it in less than a day. "This is impossible," said a visiting researcher, staring at the data. "You really need to stop using that word around humans," Danny called from his chamber. "We take it as a challenge." Commander visited on the third day, after both and Danny were cleared from quarantine. The Axion officer found them in the medical bay, where Danny was undergoing final health checks. "Corporal Blake," said formally, "your actions on the plague ship were beyond exemplary. You saved 12 lives at great personal risk." "Just doing my job, sir." "Your job description doesn't include exposing yourself to deadly pathogens." Danny shrugged. "Maybe it should. Seems like someone's got to do it." Turn 2. "Doctor, I've reviewed the pathogen samples you collected. Our research teams are already working on a cure. Your mission was a complete success." "The credit goes to Corporal Blake, Commander. I was merely support." "You both demonstrated exceptional courage. The Coalition owes you a debt." "The Coalition owes us a good meal," Danny said. "I've been eating medical rations for 2 weeks, my kingdom for a cheeseburger." Despite himself, smiled. "I'll see what we can arrange." After the commander left, helped Danny back to his recovery room. The human was walking normally now, his injuries nearly healed. In 3 weeks, he'd gone from near death to fully functional. "You amaze me," said quietly. "I'm really not that special, Doc. You survived an explosion, vacuum exposure, severe burns, broken bones, alien infection, and a deadly pathogen. All in 3 weeks. That's not special." Danny sat on his bed, thinking. "You want to know the truth? I'm scared most of the time. When that explosion hit, I thought I was dead. When the fever came, I thought I was dying. On that plague ship, I was terrified the whole time." "You never showed it." "Because people needed help. Fear's just noise when someone's counting on you. You push through it and do the work." "Is that what they teach you on Earth?" "It's what life teaches you on Earth. The planet doesn't care if you're scared. The storm doesn't stop because you're afraid. You either stand up or you fall down. Humans chose to stand up a long time ago." Sat beside him. "Your species is going to change the Coalition. You realize that?" "How?" "Because you show us what's possible. You prove that limits are just suggestions. You demonstrate that compassion can be stronger than self-preservation." "Doc, we're not that different from you. We just had a harder childhood. Earth made us tough because it had to. But any species that grew up there would probably turn out the same way." "I don't think so. Other species would have given up, found easier worlds, adapted differently. Humans chose to stand and fight and endure. That's not environment, that's character." Before Danny could respond, entered with news. "Doctor, the plague ship survivors are all stable. They're going to make it. The 2 children are asking for Corporal Blake." Danny stood immediately. "Can I see them?" "You're still in recovery." "I'm walking, talking, and thinking clearly. That means I'm recovered enough. Please, Doc." Couldn't refuse. They went to the recovery ward where the 12 survivors were being treated. Most were still weak, but all were conscious and improving. The pathogen cure, developed from Danny's antibodies, was working. The children, Lyra and, were sitting up in their beds when Danny entered. Their faces lit up with recognition. "Danny," Lyra called out. Danny walked to their bedside, smiling. "Hey, you two, looking better." "The doctors said you saved us," said. "Is that true?" "The doctors saved you. I just helped carry you to them." "You took off your helmet," Lyra said. "We saw your face. You were kind." "Everyone deserves kindness, especially when they're scared." The children's parents arrived, a couple who looked exhausted but relieved. They approached Danny with obvious emotion. "You're the human who saved our children," the mother said. "I'm Danny Blake, yes. We owe you their lives." "You don't owe me anything. I'm just glad they're safe." but the father stepped forward and placed his hand over his heart in a traditional gesture of deep respect. You gave them hope when they had none. You showed them kindness when death surrounded them. This is a debt we can never repay. Danny looked uncomfortable with the praise. Really, I just did what anyone would do. No, said softly. You did what a human would do. There's a difference. Over the next week, word of Danny's actions spread through the station. The survivors told their stories. The research team published their findings on human immune response. Commander submitted his report to Coalition Command. Danny Blake became famous, though he hated the attention. I'm just a regular soldier, he insisted to during one of their final sessions. Nothing special. You keep saying that, but the evidence disagrees. Doc, back on Earth there are billions of people like me. People who work hard, help their neighbors, stand up when needed. I'm not unique. Perhaps not among humans, but to the rest of the galaxy, your normal is our extraordinary. The day of Danny's discharge arrived. Stood in the medical bay, reviewing the final health scans. Perfect. Every injury healed, every system functioning at full capacity. In 1 month, Danny Blake had gone from the edge of death to complete recovery. Well, Doc, looks like I'm all fixed up, Danny said, dressed in his uniform again. Your physical health is excellent, remarkable even by human standards. So I can get back to my squad. Yes, you're cleared for active duty. Danny extended his hand, had learned this human gesture, the handshake that signified respect and friendship. He took Danny's hand, feeling the strength in it. Thank you for everything, Danny said. You saved my life. And you saved 12 others. I think you came out ahead. Maybe, but I couldn't have done it without you. The medical bay doors opened, and Danny's squad entered, led by Hayes. They erupted in cheers when they saw him, gathering around with backslaps and laughter. Look at you all healed up, said. We were starting to think you'd gone soft, lying around in medical for a month. Had to let the rest of you catch up, Danny replied with a grin. Watch them leave, this group of humans with their easy camaraderie and casual strength. Commander joined him at the window. Quite a species, observed. Yes. Command is recommending humans for more active roles in coalition operations. Their resilience is a strategic advantage. Be careful with that thinking, Commander. Humans are resilient, but they're not invincible, and they should never be used just because they can survive what others cannot. What would you recommend? Remember that their resilience serves their compassion, not the other way around. Danny didn't survive because he's tough. He survived because he had people to protect. Use humans wisely, and they'll be your greatest allies. Use them carelessly, and you'll lose what makes them special. Nodded slowly. Wise advice, Doctor. That evening, sat in his office, updating his medical logs. He wrote about Danny Blake's case, documenting everything for future reference. When he finished the medical details, he added a personal note. In 40 years of practice, I have never encountered a patient like Corporal Danny Blake. His physical resilience is remarkable, but it is not his greatest strength. His greatest strength is his refusal to accept that anyone should suffer if he can help. He endured pain, risked death, and pushed beyond all reasonable limits, not for glory or recognition, but because people needed help and he could provide it. I asked weeks ago what alloy this human was forged from. I now have my answer. Humans are forged from the fires that created their deadly world, tempered by hardship and shaped by an unbreakable will to protect others. They are not weapons, though they can fight. They are not tools, though they can work. They are guardians who happen to be nearly unbreakable, and the galaxy is better for having them. Danny Blake taught me that impossible is a word we use when we lack imagination, that limits are often self-imposed, that the strongest steel is tempered by the hottest fire, and that sometimes the greatest strength is simply refusing to quit when someone needs you. Earth produces these beings by the billions, not super soldiers or engineered warriors, but ordinary people who do extraordinary things because they believe it's the right choice. I have seen one human achieve the impossible. I can only imagine what humanity as a whole will accomplish. The galaxy should prepare itself, not for invasion or conquest, but for help it doesn't yet know it needs, delivered by people who will endure any hardship to provide it. That is the human way. That is Danny Blake's legacy. That is what happens when you forge a species in fire and teach it to care about others. I am honored to have met him. I am grateful to have treated him. and I am humbled by the lesson he taught me about what it means to endure. Saved the file and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, Danny Blake was back with his squad, probably making jokes about his injuries and downplaying his heroism. Just another human in a galaxy that was slowly learning what that meant. What alloy was this human forged from? Asked the stars one last time. The answer came to him clearly now. Not alloy, not metal or machine. Danny Blake and all humans like him were forged from something stronger than any material substance. They were forged from will, shaped by compassion, and tempered by an environment that demanded they either become unbreakable or die trying. They chose unbreakable, and they chose to use that strength to help others. That realized was the real miracle, not that humans could survive the impossible, but that after surviving it, they immediately turned around and asked who else needed help. The galaxy was going to need time to understand these strange beings from Earth, but had no doubt that humanity would give them that time, patiently demonstrating through action what words could never fully convey. Because that was what humans did. They endured, they persisted, they helped, and they never ever quit. Doctor smiled and returned to his work, grateful for the lesson and eager to see what these remarkable beings would do next. "You're welcome, my friend." In the darkness of quarantine, closed his eyes and hoped that human resilience would be enough one more time. "Let me run some tests," he said finally. "If your immune system is strong enough, if your body can handle it, then we'll consider it." "We'll do more than consider it," Danny said firmly. "We'll do it." And knew with absolute certainty that they would. Just watched a human body go to war with itself and win. He approached Danny's bedside. The human's eyes were closed, his breathing steadier now. "What alloy was this human forged from?" asked again, softer this time. From the bed, Danny's lips moved slightly. "Steel and stubbornness, Doc, steel and stubbornness." Then he slept, and his body continued the impossible work of healing itself. What alloy was this human forged from? Nobody had an answer,